My entire life until I was 18 and my grandfather passed away, I'm going to be a police officer.
Moral of the story: if you are a hot-tempered, immature jerk, don't carry a gun.
I told him, I said, I have a gun. I said, and I will shoot you.
Screaming at someone to get out of their car while you are pointing a gun at them is usually called a carjacking or robbery.
I'll give you that. So they told you that they do not want you to chase him, correct?
Correct.
Someone in fear for their life doesn't chase down the person they're afraid of. In May 2019, a moment of impulsive decision-making on a Georgia roadway would spiral into a criminal case that raised profound questions about vigilantism, authority, fear, and the limits of citizen intervention. At the center of that case was Hannah Payne, a young woman whose actions following a minor traffic accident ended with the death of Kenneth Herring, a 62-year-old man who never made it home that day. The incident began not with violence, but with a routine traffic mishap. On a spring afternoon in Clayton County, Georgia, Herring was driving a pickup truck when it collided with a commercial tractor-trailer. The impact was not catastrophic. No one was seriously injured, and the vehicles involved were able to move away from the scene. For reasons that remain disputed, Herring did not stop and exchange information. He continued driving. That decision, leaving the scene of a minor accident, would normally fall into the realm of a traffic offense. In most cases, it results in a police report, a citation, perhaps a court date. But on this day, another driver who had witnessed the collision decided that leaving the matter to law enforcement was not enough. Hannah Payne was not involved in the accident. She was not struck. She was not injured. She did not know Kenneth Herring. But she saw the collision, saw Herring's vehicle continue down the road, and made a choice that would alter multiple lives forever. She pulled over and called 911. The recorded 911 call would later become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the case. In it, Payne identified herself as a witness to a hit-and-run and provided a description of Herring's truck. She told the dispatcher she intended to follow him. The dispatcher repeatedly instructed her not to do so.
Okay. It is a Georgia Pass. License plate is RHA as in Apple 4859.
Okay. So, if you can go back to that location where the incident happened, it's because someone is actually on the way to you guys now.
Okay, well, there's a police officer there, but he is drunk. I'm sorry, but I'm here to tell you I'm not going to follow him because he is going to cause another accident. So I will stay behind him until an officer can get to us, but until then, I'm not moving.
Yeah, no, that's what I want. I want you guys to go back to the location where it happened, and an officer will be out there momentarily, okay? Ma'am. Ma'am.
She was told to remain at the scene, to provide information, and to let law enforcement handle the situation. Payne acknowledged the instructions, and then ignored them. Instead of waiting, she pursued Herring in her vehicle. As the chase unfolded, the power dynamics between the two drivers shifted. What began as a witness observing a traffic violation became a private pursuit. Payne followed Herring for several minutes, closing distance, maneuvering around traffic, and eventually pulling alongside him. The evidence presented at trial showed that she intentionally intercepted his vehicle at an intersection, positioning her car in a way that blocked his path forward. This was the moment prosecutors would later describe as the point of no return. Payne exited her vehicle, handgun in hand. She approached the driver's side of Herring's truck. Witnesses testified that she began shouting at him, demanding that he pull over, demanding that he wait for police. Herring, according to testimony, appeared confused and frightened. He did not brandish a weapon. He did not threaten her. He remained seated in his truck. What happened in the seconds that followed was the central dispute of the trial. Payne claimed that the shooting was accidental, that a struggle occurred, that she feared Herring might attempt to flee or harm her. The prosecution told a very different story. According to the state, Payne inserted herself into a situation she had no legal authority to control, escalated the encounter with a firearm, and then used deadly force against a man who posed no immediate threat. The shot was fatal. Kenneth Herring was struck and later died from his injuries. Payne remained at the scene until police arrived. She was arrested and charged with multiple serious felonies, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and firearms offenses tied to the commission of a crime. From the outset, the case drew intense public attention. It touched on emotionally charged issues: race, gun ownership, self-defense, and the concept of citizen's arrest. Payne's defense team initially leaned heavily on the idea that she believed she was lawfully detaining a suspect until police could arrive. They argued that her intent was not to kill, but to prevent a hit-and-run driver from escaping accountability. Georgia law, however, does not allow private citizens to conduct armed traffic stops or detain individuals under threat of deadly force for misdemeanor offenses. The prosecution emphasized this repeatedly. Kenneth Herring was not committing a violent felony in Payne's presence. Even if he had left the scene of an accident, that did not give Payne the authority to pursue him, block his vehicle, or confront him with a gun. As the trial unfolded, jurors were presented with a methodical reconstruction of the timeline. Dashcam footage, surveillance video from nearby businesses, the 911 call, witness statements, and forensic evidence were introduced to show that Payne had multiple opportunities to disengage, and chose not to. One of the most damaging elements for the defense was the 911 recording itself. Jurors heard the dispatcher calmly and clearly instruct Payne to stop following Herring. They heard her acknowledge those instructions. And they saw, through subsequent evidence, that she continued anyway. In courtroom footage from the trial, Payne appeared composed but visibly tense. At times she dabbed her eyes. At others she stared straight ahead, hands clasped. When prosecutors replayed the audio of the 911 call, her posture stiffened. Observers noted moments where she appeared to shake her head slightly, as if disagreeing with her own recorded words. When Payne took the stand in her own defense, the trial reached its emotional peak. She testified that she was scared, that she believed Herring might be dangerous, that she did not intend to kill him. She described the moment of the shooting as chaotic and unintentional. But under cross-examination, prosecutors pressed her on key points. Why she ignored the dispatcher, why she blocked his vehicle, why she exited her car with a loaded firearm, and why she placed herself in a position where deadly force became possible. The jury deliberated for a relatively short time. Their verdict was unequivocal. Hannah Payne was found guilty on all counts. The courtroom reaction was immediate and emotional. Members of Herring's family wept openly. Payne's family sat stunned. Payne herself collapsed into sobs as the verdicts were read aloud, her shoulders shaking, her face buried in her hands. Sentencing came later and it was severe. In December 2023, a judge sentenced Hannah Payne to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Additional consecutive sentences were imposed for related charges, meaning she would be required to serve decades before even becoming eligible for release. The judge spoke at length about the gravity of the offense, emphasizing that Payne's actions were not a mistake or a momentary lapse, but a series of deliberate choices that led to a man's death. In victim impact statements, Kenneth Herring's family described the devastation left behind: the loss of a father, a grandfather, a presence that could never be replaced. They spoke of birthdays missed, empty chairs at holidays, and the permanence of what had been taken. Payne's defense attorneys argued for leniency, citing her age, lack of prior violent criminal history, and the argument that she did not wake up that day intending to kill someone. The judge acknowledged those factors, but ultimately concluded that they did not outweigh the harm caused. In the years since the sentencing, the case has continued to resonate. It has been cited in discussions about vigilantism and the dangers of armed civilian intervention. Legal analysts point to it as a cautionary example of how quickly perceived authority can turn into criminal liability. Payne has filed appeals, challenging aspects of the conviction and sentence. As of the most recent updates, those appeals remain pending. She is incarcerated in Georgia's prison system, serving her life sentence while the legal process continues. The case of Hannah Payne is not one that fits neatly into a single narrative. It is not a story of a hardened criminal or a long-planned act of violence. It is a story of escalation, of how fear, certainty, and a belief in personal authority can collide with the law in irreversible ways. Kenneth Herring did not have a criminal record that suggested he was dangerous. He was not armed. He was not attacking anyone. He was leaving the scene of a traffic accident, an offense that, while unlawful, did not justify the response he received. The justice system ultimately determined that Hannah Payne crossed a line that day. Not because she witnessed a crime, but because she decided to become the enforcer of her own version of justice, ignoring clear instructions to step back and allow law enforcement to handle the situation. The verdict and sentence stand as a stark reminder that in the eyes of the law, good intentions do not excuse deadly outcomes. Authority is not self-assigned. And once a firearm is introduced into a confrontation, the margin for error disappears entirely. For Payne, the consequences are lifelong. For Herring's family, the loss is permanent. And for the public, the case remains a chilling example of how a single decision, to follow, to confront, to escalate, can transform an ordinary day into a tragedy that reverberates for years.
So the court's total sentence is life with the possibility of parole plus 8 years consecutive on the false imprisonment and 5 years consecutive on the possession of firearm during the commission of a felony. And that is the court sentence. So I'll remand you again, Ms. Payne, into the custody of the Sheriff's Department.